Oh, why hello there. You caught me doing my daily Bible reading on this beautiful Sunday morning at home, quarantined with my family, as I'm sure you are with your family. And we're just sitting here by the fireplace enjoying our family time together. My wife wanted me to let you know that this is how our fireplace normally looks. We don't normally have 100 books that we're going through from the library because the library closed and we rented as many as we could so that our kids could still do school while they're out. It normally looks this clean. Anyways, I digress. I'm so glad to be here with you in your living room and while I'm in my living room with my family on Sunday morning. I know this is a little different than what we normally do, but I hope to go through some of God's Word with you today. And maybe you can glean some things from God's words that will be encouraging to you as we go about today's online service. And just thank you for tuning in and being here this morning with me. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you got a chance to watch last Wednesday when I went on a hike with Nick. I said that I had about 100 toilet paper jokes for Sunday morning, and there are a lot, but I chose to not go with jokes. Instead, this morning I chose to go with some actual news. Here's some actual news from the Oregon Police. The Oregon Police sent this out last week to remind residents to not call 911 if you run out of toilet paper. And that was sent to me by Mike Anglada, and I just thought that was pretty funny that the police actually had to put out a tweet to say, don't send us or don't call us if you run out of toilet paper. People have been able to do this without toilet paper for a long time. So, I use that because we are in strange times, aren't we? It's a time where we are having to adjust. We're having to do things differently than we normally do. And I think where I want to go this morning, I think it's something that speaks to our time, something that I hope that you can relate to. I'm actually borrowing today's message from a book title by Max Lucado called You'll Get Through This. It's about the story of Joseph, which I'm going to use, but that's where I got my inspiration from this morning, and it's I think a book worthwhile for you to pick up. But I wanted to go through just a little bit of the story of the life of Joseph from Genesis chapter 37. For those of you who aren't familiar with the story, that's where it starts in Genesis, the very first book in the Bible, chapter 37. And it's a story about the patriarch of the Israelite faith, of where Jesus, the Messiah, comes from. It's a story of Jacob, the son of Abraham, or the son of Isaac, who's the son of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He has these sons, and all of them are they're wonderful sons to Jacob, but none of them are from his favorite wife. I know that's sort of weird for us to talk about, but he is in love with one woman. He's married to two, and the woman who he's in love with finally has a child. His name is Joseph, and he is Jacob's favorite child. He even makes him a coat of many colors. Everybody else gets hand-me-downs. All 11 or 10 of Joseph's brothers get hand-me-downs, but Joseph gets this beautiful coat. He's pampered. He's the favorite child. He's the youngest boy, and he's being treated like the oldest son. And the brothers resent him for this. They get really angry that he is being pampered and favored by their father, and so they are jealous of him. What makes matters worse is that Joseph actually has dreams that he says are from God about him, his family, his brothers bowing down to him and worshiping him, and not the other way around. And that makes them really upset. And so one day, as Joseph is going to go tell his brothers that his daddy needs them, he goes to go talk to them. They're out in the fields watching the flocks. And Joseph is on his way out there, and the brothers actually scheme to kill him. I don't know if you have a family like Joseph's family, where things have gotten so bad that they're scheming to do you harm. But I know some families have. Maybe you can relate to this story. But Joseph is on his way, and they're ready to do him in. But one of the brothers convinces him not to do that. Instead, Joseph gets thrown into a pit, into a cistern. And so that's kind of where we're starting off today. Genesis chapter 37, starting in verse 19, it says, "Here comes that dreamer," they said. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him, and then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Well, when Reuben heard of this, they tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the richly ornamented robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. And now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. And then they sat down to eat their meal. Can you imagine that these guys are going to kill him? They've plotted to kill him. They've thrown him into this cistern. And then they sit down to eat a meal together, like, job well done. Let's feast. It's a hard situation probably for Joseph to find himself in, that his brothers have thrown him into this cistern. They really want him dead. They don't want him alive. And he finds himself down in a hole, down in a pit. And I wonder, have you found yourself down in a hole, down in a pit lately? Maybe it's this week that you have found yourself already up to your eyeballs in debt, and now you're getting laid off and there's no more income coming in. Maybe there's marriage issues at the home, and to make things worse, you're stuck at home trying to work this thing out. Maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know. Maybe it's you're exhausted mom at home, and now your kids are home for at least 6 more weeks, and you have to figure out what to do with them. The reality is that a lot of people actually during this time, they're actually dealing with not only this situation that we find ourselves in right now, but it's on top of other things that they're already dealing with. And so if you're finding yourself down in a pit, down in a hole right now, you'd be in good company with a lot of people, because a lot of people are there. And you'd be in good company with Joseph. Well, there's really 3 things that I want you to know. That, and the first is this, that things might get worse before they get better. Things might get worse before they get better. A lot of people might be saying to me, "Jeb, you're crazy. You just had a video about, okay, do not fear, do not be afraid, but we're being quarantined. There's people dying." And I get it. I have a very dear and close friend to us in Bellevue who actually has the coronavirus right now, and they've quarantined him at a hotel right now, and they actually had to move him to a medical facility because things were getting worse. And really, I don't know for you, but for me, the reality of the situation is getting closer and closer to home. And so I get it. I'm not trying to make things seem like they're not really what they are, but I do want to say that just because things might get worse before they get better, it doesn't change who I put my hope in. And it doesn't change that I can still have joy, I can still have hope, I can still have faith in the moment right now, even though this situation is getting closer and closer to being a reality in my own home. I don't want us to be afraid that things might get a little worse before they get better. They got a little bit worse before they got better for Joseph. Joseph, with his time in the pit, that was just the beginning of how things got worse. He ends up, even though he goes to Egypt eventually, and even though he winds up in a house where he rises to be an official over people, he ends up having to go to prison. And after that, he ends up being forgotten. Joseph, things get worse before they get better for Joseph. And the same might be true for us. But don't lose hope in who you have put your faith in. That's the story of Joseph, and that's the second thing I want you to understand this morning, is to never give up. Never give up. I want you to understand that it won't be painless and it won't be quick. You'll get through this time with your family, with your church. So don't give up. Don't give up. You'll get through this. It won't be painless and it won't be quick, but you'll get through this. Joseph, when he was pure in the midst of temptation, it lands him in prison, but he doesn't give up. When Joseph shares and foretells a dream about to people who are in prison because they're supposed to be in prison, and Joseph isn't supposed to be in prison, but he's there, and he shares these dreams out of the goodness of his heart to help these people. All he gets in return is forgotten. Joseph is 17 years old when he first falls into the pit. It's not until he's 27 years old that he actually ends up getting out of the pit. And so even though things are starting to get worse for you, perhaps, I want you to remember you'll get through this. Don't give up. It may not be painless. It may not be quick, but never, ever give up. The last thing I want you to remember this morning is that God is building through this time. God is still using us and working through this moment. In God's hands, evil intended becomes eventual good. In Genesis chapter 50, at the end of Joseph's story in the book of Genesis, it says in verse 19, his brothers, his father has died. Jacob has died. His brothers come to him, and they think Joseph is going to kill him for what they did to him, because they wanted to kill him when he was a 17-year-old boy. And so they come to him and they plead with him, please do not kill us. And Joseph comforts them here. In verse 19, he says, Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. I am in the place of God to you. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. I don't know where you're at in your situation with the coronavirus. I don't know where you're at in your situation with your job, your family, at your home. But whatever it might be, even though it is not painless, even though this is not going quickly, even though things feel like this is not going to end, I want you to know that God is not absent. God is in this moment caring for you, caring for our church, caring about what happens to people in this moment in time of history. And so even though you feel like God has maybe abandoned you in some way, I want you to remember that God is also using these moments to build for his kingdom. Joseph had no idea that him going through a pit would later on bring, you could easily say, the salvation or the saving of the entire known world at the time from starvation. Now that's a pretty huge thing. And he probably never saw it when he was in prison. He probably never saw it while he was being forgotten in jail. But Joseph will eventually become second to Pharaoh and save the whole world because of God's mighty hand working through him. And God may be preparing you for a moment like Joseph. Maybe it's not going to be saving of a whole world or anything like that, but maybe God is preparing you for some type of leadership, some type of a moment where he's going to use you in a powerful way. And it's the time in the pit. It's the time when you are pure in the midst of temptation, the times when you're forgotten. God hasn't forgotten you. He's going to use those moments to strengthen your character, to use you for his purposes and for his glory later on. So don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Don't give up. Now, that's the message I've seen through Joseph that I wanted to convey to you. I know it's a little different being here online and doing this all through YouTube. It's different for me. It's new for me. And I know it's new for you as well, so thank you for being here and being a part of that. I hope that that speaks to you in some way. I got a couple of announcements, and then I'll kind of close this thing out with actually one more thought. But the first thing is, for next week, we're going to talk about a couple of guys for the next 2 weeks who have found themselves in isolation in the Bibles and Scripture. And so we're going to go through a couple of stories of a couple of guys who found themselves there. And then we're going to, on the third week, we're going to go back to the end of our Mark series and conclude with the story of the resurrection. It will be Easter Sunday that day. So make sure to invite your friends to that, to watch online. It might be a fireside chat, but we're going to talk about the resurrection of Jesus that day. A couple of just housekeeping things. Make sure that you check your bulletin, because there's a lot of information in there about what's going on and what's been postponed. I am just going to hit the highlights that have been highlighted in there as far as what's suspended and what's postponed, so those of you who may not have the bulletin can know. Monday night class has been suspended. Teacher appreciation luncheon has been postponed. Desi and Derek's wedding has been postponed as well. Dollar Sunday is still up in the air. I think we will still do it. If you want to give online, I'll have some information for you on that in just a minute. Spring Church Workday is still tentative for the 4th of April. Men's breakfast at Lakeview has been canceled on April 4th. Easter potluck is tentative still. We're not sure if we're going to have it. Singing workshop has been postponed until the summer. Delano Workday has been canceled. Teen Sunday has been postponed. Pepperdine Bible Lectures have been canceled. Mission Sunday is tentative. Faith Builders 2020 is tentative. That was July 9th through 11th. Mission Sunday is tentative May 31st. We're not sure yet. And then again, tentative 1st through 3rd grade camp. We're not sure what's going to happen there. We're thinking it will happen, but who knows at this point. So there's a lot of things up in the air. There's a lot of change for all of us. So be looking in your bulletin, be looking online for things that are coming up in our announcements. So finally, I want to give what I might call closing elder comments. These are some things that one of our elders has sent on to remind you of, and I'm just going to go through a couple of those things. A reminder that those who have been hit hard financially by having to be quarantined from their job and things like that, and from quarantined at home, that if you're finding yourself in a financially tight situation, to make sure that you communicate those needs to David St. Martin, and he can help you with that out of our People Fund possibly. We'll try and find a solution for you to help you as you just right now in the immediate time, so that you can kind of make it through this difficult time. Kind of along those lines, I'm going to provide a link in the description today of where you can donate online. Make sure that if you want to send a check in, do not send it to our physical address. Send it to our P.O Box, P.O Box 2495, and we can receive your donation that way. This also can be an encouraging time for people to get outside. I know that a lot of us are feeling cooped up. It's been really nice out lately, so make sure you get outside, go for walks, meet up with a friend if you feel like that's a safe thing for you to do, and do some exercise. Keep a safe distance from everybody. Again, this might all change with the governor's orders for quarantine, but as best as you can, do those things. Organize your closet. Wash, clean, vacuum out your car. All those types of things are good things to do while you're having to sit at home and kind of twiddle your thumbs, so to speak. So I want to remind you that when you're in the pit, a good thing to remember is the pit forces us to look upward. So don't forget that when you're down in a hole, when you're down in a pit, realize, I can't really find my release. I can't find my coping mechanism from places that maybe I normally found them from, and it's a good time to be looking upward towards God, towards the one who can help you in this time, in this situation. But also, now is a good time to be looking downward for those who might be in the pit too, for those who are really struggling financially, or maybe they're struggling to get their medications or whatever. You know, we want to encourage you to help your neighbor, to help those around you, to be sincere about helping your brothers and sisters in Christ. Now, I think, is a great time to actually be calling up people who you may not have seen at church in a while and go, you know what, I've missed you. And it's not because you haven't been there because of coronavirus, you know. Maybe they haven't been there for a long time. And they need to know that they're still cared for and that we're still thinking of them. Maybe there's a person in your mind that you're thinking of who hasn't been attending in a while, who you need to reach out to. So go do that this week. Be a good neighbor. Love your neighbor. Love God. Love your family. And as always, remember that, yes, fear is contagious, but so is encouragement and so is hope. And so be the hope to the world around you this week. I love you. I'm going to miss you meeting with you this week, but we're still thinking of you. Let us know if you have any needs that we can help with. We want to be able to be there to help you. Have a great week. Thanks for joining us.